between 1910 and 1920 when animation exploded as a real and serious art form. I'm going to take this opportunity to jump in here and hope that you are really enjoying these videos that I'm making. I'm having a great time making them, and I really need your help to keep them going. So if you could click on that subscribe button, check off on that like button, and of course share these videos with your friends, it would mean the world to me because it'll help my channel and it'll help me bring more of these videos to you so that you can enjoy animation as much as I do. It was Winsor McCay in 1913 who created animation using the characters from his comic strip in the newspapers called Little Nemo: Adventures in Slumberland. After he did a few of those, he created a short cartoon that he called How the Mosquitoes Work. And then after that, he created the first cartoon that had personality in it, and it was titled Gertie the Dinosaur. Now, Gertie the Dinosaur was a longer cartoon, and it was something that brought personality into the characters. So this was a major change from all the shorts that just did a quick little story that didn't really tell much. So Winsor McCay started this type of work. Although Winsor McCay was the pioneer of personality, his work was done mostly by him. He had a few helpers do the backgrounds, but he did most of the drawings. Now, the problem with that is it took him a very long time to create these animation shorts. At that same time in 1916, a major newspaper mogul by the name of William Randolph Hearst had taken the comic strips that he had printed in his newspapers and used the artists from those comic strips to create shorts of animation of those characters. Now, he created hundreds of them, and Hearst used them in his newsreels that they played in the movie theaters at the time to show off not only animation, but the characters that were in his newspaper. By doing this, he got more readers of his newspapers and, of course, in turn, made more money from the sales of the newspapers. It didn't last that long because Hearst was more interested in selling newspapers than he was in creating animation. In 1907, another young journalist emerged onto the scene by creating his own comic strip for the newspaper that he worked for that was titled Little Johnny and the Teddy Bears, which soon was shortened to just the Teddy Bears. His name was John Randolph Bray. Now, Bray had been working on this comic strip up until 1909. There was the time very soon after that that he kind of broke away from the newspaper and started his own animation studio. Now, what was unique about this one was twofold. One, his studio was solely and only created to create animation and animated cartoons. The other very, very important part of his studio was that he created the studio to work in the form and principles of industrial production. Now that means that he took the idea from Ford Motor Company, where he had an assembly line similar and created animation like that. He would hire other animators to work with him and to create the cartoons that he was developing. Now, one person that he hired, whom he became very good friends with, was a name that I want you to keep in mind, Max Fleischer. It was 1914 when Bray opened the studio that he named Bray Studios Incorporated. Now, besides the factory line of animation creation and other unique works that Bray did for his studio, he had one major innovation. He remembered what was done in earlier cartoons, like Winsor McCay's, where the artists would draw every single frame, including the background. Well, Bray thought that that was a waste of time. So what Bray came up with was a way to print out hundreds of sheets of paper that had the background already drawn on it. That way, he or his artists could then simply animate just the characters, and that made the animation creation much quicker. Bray Studios, or Bray Productions, had produced over 500 short animation films between 1913 and 1937. Most of them were animated cartoons, and there was some documentary shorts in there as well. It was in 1916 when a young cartoonist had joined Bray Productions for a short time, and his name was another one that I want you to keep in the back of your mind. It was Paul Terry. There were very many young cartoonists and young animators working for Bray Studios, and some of them worked for a while and broke off and created their own animation studio. These studios were popping up all over the place, but not so many of them lasted very long because of the amount of work that's involved and the cost that's involved. Well, Bray Studios did another amazing thing that was never done before, and Bray Studio produced the very first animated film in color. And this was done in 1920. The name of this cartoon was called The Debut of Thomas the Cat. This was a two-color process invented by Percy Douglas Brewster in 1913, especially to compete with Technicolor. Unfortunately, this film had been lost in time, so I don't have it to show you what it looked like. However, this character, known as Thomas the Cat, he kind of evolved over time, and he got a name change. You might know him better as Felix the Cat. In 1915, yet another young cartoonist joined the Bray Studio. His name was Earl Hurd. Now, Earl Hurd was well known for doing terrific animation, so much so that he actually paired up with Bray himself. But the one thing that Earl Hurd was best known for was the invention of using celluloid so that you can create a background as a painting and then take these celluloid sheets of plastic, which became known as cells, paint the characters on the cells, and then lay them on top of the backgrounds. That way, you can have a beautifully elaborate background that never changes, and yet animate the characters on the cells, and that's what is going to give the appearance of movement. These made animated cartoons so much more complete and beautiful. Now that Hurd had created this animation cell system in conjunction with Bray, they patented it in 1917, and they made a buku amount of money from this. That's because any other animation studio that wanted to use the cell system of animation had to pay the rights to the Bray Studios to use it. So it was something that really made Bray and Hurd a lot of money. Now, at the same time that all of this was going on, Max Fleischer in 1917 created a whole new way of animating characters extremely smoothly. He created what is known as a rotoscope. And what a rotoscope does is it takes a film of a regular person, projects it onto a light box or a box that just has a sheet of glass on one side so that they can go frame by frame and the animator can trace every movement of the person that was filmed in the first place. By doing so, they get a much, much smoother animation than the jumpy type of animation they would get when they make the movements up in their own mind. Even though the rotoscope was invented in 1917, it really didn't get a good foothold and used a lot until the 1920s. So, if you were really to think about it, the 1910s was the time for the inventions, all of the things to make quality animation. But it was in the 1920s when the animation became incredible. This is Professor Tom. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I'm wishing you a happy and wonderful day. You take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.